This is Chris Tuttle, Universal Athlete, IFBB Pro. Today we're going to talk about food safety, measures that things that we can do to help protect ourselves from being sick, getting any GI issues, throwing up our vomiting, diarrhea, things that we can do to help protect us, especially because the amount of food that bodybuilders, strongmen, powerlifting prepare on a daily basis, and obviously travel with. So I'm first going to talk about what in food service they call the time temperature danger zone. What it is a range of temperatures where bacteria grows the fastest. Now, some things that people don't realize is even if this fish is fresh, I just cut it and I put it on a plate, there's obviously, say nobody touched it or you washed it, so you think it's clear bacteria. But there's bacteria in the air, there's particles, and the longer something sits, particularly at room temperature, especially things that contain protein and water, things that will grow bacteria the fastest. Over time, this will grow bacteria faster and faster and faster. And once it reaches a certain number of bacteria, that's when you get sick. So sometimes you go to a restaurant and 3 people eat, and 2 people get sick, the other person doesn't. They all eat the same dish. Sometimes it doesn't necessarily mean that, it wasn't foodborne illness. It could have been that third person who didn't get sick may not have consumed enough of that bacteria to get sick. So time temperature danger zone is between 40 and 140 degrees Fahrenheit. That's when bacteria grows the fastest. So when you're storing food, you want to keep your food around 40 degrees, even 39, 38 in the refrigerator. And I do recommend putting a thermometer in the refrigerator. I mean, all the food establishments that we eat at, we pay money for. You walk into their walk-in freezers. They all have temperature guides, especially the hospitals and things like that. So it doesn't mean we shouldn't do that either. And freezer should be about 0 degrees. Fahrenheit, and that's one thing also, people, that's what you should set your refrigerator at or your freezer. We have 4 different types of meat, and the reason I'm only touching on these meats is because these are the most common things that bodybuilders, strongmen, powerlifters eat. We have fish, we have ground beef, cooked steak, cooked chicken. So steak, one thing about steak, between steak and ground meat is the bacteria on steak, when raw, is only going to exist on the outside. There's not going to be any bacteria inside the meat. So that's why you can potentially get away with eating, red meat raw, like rare. You go to steak, cold red center, because when you cook on the top, the bacteria on the outside gets killed from the heat, and the inside still stays tender, moist, and raw or cold red center if you like it that way. Ground beef, however, is taking like the sirloin and grinding it up. So now you're grinding all the internal parts of it out, and now you can have bacteria inside and throughout. So it's always safer to cook ground meat to an internal temperature of about 160 degrees. 160 degrees is where pretty much everything dies. So that's one thing to keep in mind. We go to restaurants, I always ask them, I go, listen, if you do you grind your meat here? And if they say yes, I usually will ask for medium rare hamburger. If they say no, like, a typical restaurant won't do that, like a Chili's, they get their beef brought in already ground. That means it's ground at a factory, much higher likely to have E. coli in it. And not all red meat has E. coli, obviously it has to be contaminated with. So that's one tip you can use and ask them, like, hey, do you ground your beef here? And if you do ground the beef on site, you're more likely to be much safer. It's obviously the safest to cook it to internal temperature of 160, but for me, I never do that because I'll buy my meat at Holland Park Market. They grind it there. It's not ground offshore. I mean, at a factory. Another thing interesting about E. coli is most of the incidents of E. coli were existed from when the prepackaged hamburger meats that you get at the store. They're already ground, prepackaged, flattened in the frozen section. They are actually ground on factory, frozen, formed on site. Those have been shown to have bacteria. A lot of the meats like Stop and Shop, Big Y, a lot of that stuff is ground there. It still has a higher risk, but obviously, not as high of risk. Now we have fish. The thing about fish is E. coli and salmonella obviously aren't going to be on fish, but fish you got to worry about parasites. So you want to cook fish usually to internal temperature of 145 or till it flakes apart and breaks apart. 145 is where parasites will die, or worms. Not all. And then chicken. Chicken obviously has known to have salmonella. Not all chicken has salmonella. So you want to cook internal temperature of chicken to about 165. That's when salmonella will die. Okay? So 145 fish, 165 chicken, We got about 145, 150 beef. That's if you don't like it rare. I like mine rare. Ground beef, this is obviously for the safest way. And ground beef should be about 160 internal temperature if you're being the safest possible, or you don't trust the source of where it's being ground. So that's one thing I want to mention is, a lot of people will ask, like, oh, I always dry out my chicken. Well, you know what? Temperature. Get a thermometer right here. You turn it on. It's got Fahrenheit and Celsius, and it actually will tell you the temperature's on here and tell you when it's done. Boom, stick it right in there. In the center, you can see where it's at. That way you won't overcook it, but you also know it's not raw or it's safe. Because in the winter, you're cooking, it's dark outside, it's freezing, you're not really paying attention too well, so sometimes you stick it right in the chicken. The fattest portion, the meatiest part of the chicken or the meat, find the temperature and pull it off. I always cook mine to 160. It says 165, I do 160. Restaurants sometimes will serve it a little bit less than that. Not particularly always, especially pork. Trichinosis is found in pork. People think you gotta cook the heck out of it, but that hasn't been around in a long time. And a lot of restaurants will even serve pork at an internal temperature of like 135, when it should be about like 150, 155, I believe. So that's the meat portion. I want to go into transportation of food because I see so many people, they'll cook all their food, they keep it in the fridge, and then they put it in their bag with no freezer packs, and they walk around 8 hours a day and it's at room temperature, or they don't even use freezer packs, or they have 7 containers and only 1 freezer pack. Well, I got news for you, like time, temperature, danger zone. Obviously, you're not going to be able to keep the inside of a cooler super, super cold, but some of the tips I can give you is, if you got a pack like this, I would fit 3 meals in here, and I would use about 6 of these. I don't go with the softer version. Softer versions tend to thaw out faster, like the gel things, just junk. It's a waste. Get the solid ones. And cold air goes down, so when you put the cold packs in the cooler, put them on top of the food so the cold air can radiate downward. And obviously when you get paranoid like me, once you learn about, go to microbiology, take all those classes, you get a little paranoid, you put the ice packs on the side and on the top, and I'll slide the containers right in here. And also, choose a cooler that it's thick, it's got thick lining, not thin, and obviously some of the best coolers are the ones that are the cheapest. They're plastic, they have styrofoam, they have styrofoam in the middle and 2 plastic sides on the outside. Styrofoam is still the best. And that's my tip for today. I just want to go over a little about food safety, internal cooking temperatures, and transportation of food. Guys, transfer your ice packs. Don't put 1 ice pack in, 3 there. I mean, is it really worth getting sick, having diarrhea, messed up stomach from bacteria going in your food and having messed up training for 3 days? No, it's not. And I'll make another special, probably in a couple months, about actual transportation with food. And the ending tip of the day is one of the main causes of foodborne illness is people not cooling their food first before they store it. Example, if you have 13 pounds of chicken you just cooked and all these baked potatoes, sweet potatoes, and you have it in a big container like this, obviously the center of that is not going to reach cold enough for hours. It's going to be hot. Now you're putting all this hot food directly in the refrigerator. Now the whole entire refrigerator's internal temperature is going to rise way above into the time, temperature, danger zone, causing bacteria to grow. So that's one thing that you guys can look out for, is let it sit at room temperature for at least 10-15 minutes. Store in a small containers where cold air can cool it quicker, and boom, in the fridge. See you guys next time.